topic is near and dear to my heart. I think this is something that everyone listening can relate to. I mean, you ever get frustrated because you just can't get people to understand your disease in, a short greeting, and when somebody's like, "Hey, what do you live with?" So we are going to both talk about and create some elevator pitches to help you improve education and awareness about your own condition out on the streets, wherever you are. So we are going to both talk about and create our own elevator pitches to help you improve your own education and awareness about your condition out in the streets, wherever you are, grocery store. So what is an elevator pitch? I mean, that's sort of a fancy, vague term. And it goes back from my experience to when I was first starting out doing legislative advocacy in Washington, D.C. And the way it was explained to us was, what if you get on an elevator with your representative and you have 3 floors to explain why you're at the Capitol? So you have like 30 to 60 seconds to introduce yourself, to explain what the issue is, and to ask the representative if they would support it. So we use elevator pitches all the time, whether it's talking about what our careers are, and especially as people living with inflammatory and autoimmune arthritis. So I want to give an example of my own elevator pitch. And I'll say, I'm just meeting somebody for the first time, or maybe I'm explaining it to you too. So I'll say, so I have a disease that is systemic and it creates inflammation throughout my whole body. It's very painful and it's progressive. There is no cure. So I'm going to, probably get worse throughout my life. And it is called axial spondyloarthritis. You don't have to remember the name. I'll remind you. So that's like a simple elevator pitch, probably took like 30 seconds. So yeah, that is like my short elevator pitch initially. I wonder if Patrice, I can put you on the spot if you want to go next.
Actually, you did a really good job of explaining it. And like you, I have been in Washington, D.C., advocating on behalf of patients' rights with our legislators. And you do just have that small window of time. So whether it's with my legislators, maybe a neighbor that I run into at the mailbox lockers, or maybe I'm on an airplane or at the grocery store and I ask for assistance, especially on the airplanes when you're loading their carry-on up above. I'm not very tall. I'm 5'1.5", so I can barely reach those. And then having to put a suitcase above that, I usually ask somebody, and I don't think I have ever been denied, but I always tell them, I usually have my hand braces on because that's where I have most of my osteoarthritis. And when I tell them that, they're usually very accommodating. But if I'm talking to a stranger, let's say I'm out walking in my neighborhood and I meet one of the neighbors that has just moved in, and they say, "Oh yeah, I see you walking all the time." And I said, "Well, yes, on my good days." And and then I have arthritis. It is an incurable and chronic condition. I have good days, I have bad days. I know I do not look like I have arthritis, but what do people who have arthritis look like? And and I just explain it's a painful condition. There's, like I said, no cure, and I just try to live my life the best way I can.
Totally. I think that that's a really way to put it. Is that a really good way to put that? It's definitely you do want to, let them know like what's going on, but you don't have to tell them every single detail or what exactly is going on. Especially if you're, speaking to someone that you're not really on a personal level with. It's kind of like, I don't have to justify myself to you, but if you want to know a little bit, then will, love to tell you a little bit. And so I have explained my disease a lot to a lot of people. I was the president of the Filipino club in college. And so I made it known that I had a disease because I would be in and out of meetings sometimes, or sometimes I just couldn't participate. And so I wanted people to know and be aware of my disease. And so I'll go ahead and give a stab at of like how I would usually tell them about my disease. And so I let them know that I have lupus. It's an autoimmune disease where basically in your body, it's fighting against itself. It can fight against organs, skin, muscles, uh, anything basically. And that's where like the derivative of the name lupus comes from is it means wolf in Latin. And so basically you think of it as a wolf attack all over your body. And so that's kind of the little spiel that I give to them. I'll also say my symptoms usually are mostly fatigue and joint pain, and that's kind of the biggest things that happen to me. And so I like to, let them know what my symptoms are so that, if they see me kind of moping around or like kind of slowly walking sometimes, I'm like, I'm just in a little bit of pain, but like it's okay, like no big deal. And I think that's one of the biggest things is just being able to let people know in a small amount of time like what's happening, and if they're curious, just being able to let them know. And so I want to also bring awareness to our disease. So our disease is, and so whenever I have the chance to tell somebody about my disease, I usually take the time to do so, so that I can let that person know more that there are invisible diseases that people don't know about, that anyone that you might be looking at on the street who look quote unquote normal may have. And so, yeah, I think that goes into our next point of the conversation that we want to go over is, why do we even need these elevator pitches? I mean, we talked about it a little bit in the beginning about, you may be in a situation where you have to ask for help, or you may be in a situation where, someone is asking you what's wrong. And so, um, is there any other things that you guys can think of that, like, why we would need these elevator pitches?
I think this is Charis. I think that, while you were both sharing your pitches, I was remembering how um, autoimmune and autoinflammatory arthritis is so misunderstood. Like when you say I have arthritis, the first thing that a lot of people think is that you have osteoarthritis, which is very different. It causes pain, but it is caused in a very different way. And I think that is a big reason about like why not only do we need to explain our diseases to the casual person, but like we're also forced to do it and to explain like, okay, osteoarthritis is mechanical. It's, caused by wear and tear or injury or just aging. And then, like axial spondyloarthritis is inflammatory, and we don't necessarily know what causes it, but it's not necessarily caused by injury. It can be triggered by that, but it is a system in your body that infects or affects your whole body, your organs, your joints. And so I think that is a really important point to remember. And that may even be something that lends itself to some of your own elevator pitches, like explaining what the difference is between mechanical and inflammatory arthritis.
Because that's totally what we always get, right? Oh, you're too young to have arthritis and things like that. I mean, for heaven's sake, I was diagnosed with lupus at 12. So what else could explain my joint pain at 12 years old? Like, it's definitely, obviously, there's a reason why people who are young can have it, is because it doesn't have to do with age. It has to do with, like you said, a system in your body going a little haywire and causing, basically wreaking havoc on the rest of your body. Sometimes we can get into a situation where someone is questioning us, like, oh, you say you have a disease, but what does that even mean? Like, you look normal and things like that. And that's another reason why sometimes we have to have these elevator pitches or something to kind of let them know what's going on, because a lot of us, unfortunately, have been discriminated against or had something hateful said to them, because people don't understand what's going on with us. And always give the example of when I was in college, I parked in the handicap spot in the library, and I came outside to, get out of my parking space, and someone, was like, you look fine. Why are you in the disability spot? Like, you're too fat. That's why you have a disability placard. And I was very upset, but also had nothing to say. Like, I rolled up my window and just went about my day, and then went on Snapchat and ranted about it because I didn't know what else to do. And I really wish in that exact moment that I was like, not every disability is visible. I have an invisible disease, and I don't have to justify myself to you. I have this disability placard because my doctor signed off for me to have it, because I have it, and I have it for a valid reason. And that's exactly what I would have said at that time. It's in that situation, it's none of their business. You don't really have to tell them exactly what you have, or anything like that, but you should still say something to stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself and everybody else who has these diseases.
I agree. And when I was first diagnosed with RA, I was very angry. I have had OA in my left knee for 38 years, so been a long time dealing with that and living with that. But the RA was just, I think like the rest of us, it was just, I was flabbergasted when the doctor diagnosed me with it. I thought I had something totally different wrong with me. And, and then you get to the point where I would say to people, well, I can't, I'm having a bad day. I can't exactly do that today. And it's like, well, why? And I used to get very angry at people, why don't you understand my disease? Can't you see I'm, doing the best I can? But now after 12 years of living with it, I have just finally figured out, kind of a softer, gentler approach. And I would say for the most part, people are very understanding, with the exception of, I get this probably at least once, maybe twice a week. You don't look like you have arthritis. And then, of course, like Leila had mentioned, you're too young to have arthritis. And the OA that was diagnosed in my left knee was the result of two traumatic injuries and two subsequent surgeries when I was 12 and I was 13. So I was only 30 when I was diagnosed with osteoarthritis in my left knee. And there are three ways that you can get osteoarthritis. One, which in my left knee was traumatic injuries followed by the surgeries. The other one is through age. And I think that most people who do not have arthritis can, kind of agree about that. And the third way, which I was kind of blown away when I saw my rheumatologist, I think it was about 4 years ago, and he diagnosed me in OA in my hands, hips, spine, and lower back. And I said, I think I'm kind of, and even myself, I said, I think I'm kind of young to have that. Don't you agree? And he says, no. He said, this other OA that you've now been diagnosed is hereditary. I don't have any family history of that, but that's a lot of us arthritis patients, there is no family history of that. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that. Also, that for me, my RA is more like, and Charis explained this great, is that it's more, for me, it's more in my muscles. And it's kind of like when you first couple of days when you have the flu and you're so achy, that's what mine feels like. And then of course the OA pain is always the joints, hips, hands, knees, ankles.
I think that speaks to then again the need for elevator pitches, because every single one of us has a different experience with our diseases. Even if we have the same exact condition, we're going to have a vastly different experience than the person next to us.